I don't think this one is that complicated. Kevin Durant got irked because he felt someone was going at his teammate. That's what it seems like to me. And so he's coming to the defense. It seems to me he's got a little beef with Kendrick Perkins. Perkins, I don't think was wrong. I said I understood Kyrie Irving's point of view and Dwight Howard's point of view. You, Stephen A., pointed out protocol. They didn't follow protocol. Why isn't this done through Chris Paul? All these kind of things. Michelle Roberts. And by the way, that's what Perkins was really pointing to. So, okay, I think that's a legitimate question. Hey, why are you doing this kind of out of school? But by the way, there is an answer to that, too. They may say, hey, you know what? We think that we're more effective this way, or our voices are being heard but somewhat muzzled or stifled in some way, or we want to get this message out directly to the people. I mean, these are legitimate debates that can be had. But that was Perkins' beef. KD is defending his teammate, it seems to me. The problem here, Jay, is I agree with Stephen A. in this sense. And by the way, this happened during the civil rights movement. There were civil rights organizations that feuded with each other. And that's okay. The issue is the ad hominem attack. If KD doesn't like what Perkins is saying, that's one thing. But to call Perkins a sellout, as Stephen A. points out, particularly right now, is not a very good look from KD.
Look, everybody on this channel knows that I know Kevin and I do the boardroom with Kevin and Rich. Everyone also on this channel knows that Kendrick Perkins and I, we're like brothers too, right? So my thing is I always try to take a stab and look at things down the line. Do I agree with Kevin calling Kendrick Perkins a sellout? No, I do not. The reality is that the protocol wasn't followed, Max. You are exactly right. And I think sometimes when Kyrie reacts, and I'm not saying, look, I think the overall notion, like I've said on the show yesterday, I like where everything is at right now. Now, I know there might be strife between players here and there about what they want, but I do think it's interesting that they're at a inflection point where they could potentially extract more out of the NBA sponsors and networks to see what they're going to do with systematic racism and injustice. But at the same time, by not abiding by protocol, you have to look at the repercussions of what happens with that. And I think by Kyrie doing that to a degree, and not me airing out dirty laundry here, because Kendrick is in tune with this a little bit more than I am with being on some of those calls and hearing what players are saying, I do think Kyrie potentially put himself in a situation where it could become extremely volatile by doing that. Now, it doesn't defute the point that what Kyrie's doing could potentially work out ultimately in the best interest for the players, but by doing it that way, it's become very disruptive and it has divided. So for me, I don't agree with Kevin Durant calling him a sellout. And at the same time, I'm with Perkins to a degree because it makes sense. You can have multitude of arguments here that are all relevant to the point of it making sense. And Max, to go back to your original point about there being, two separate voices when you have civil rights acts like this, it's known to be okay to have that. But it doesn't make one right or the other. And look, for Kevin, this is him backing up his teammate. I don't agree with the way he's backed up his teammate here. And this is gonna be an ongoing issue for a lot of situations if Kyrie doesn't abide by protocol moving forward.
There's been bad blood with Perk and KD. That's obvious.
There is bad blood. I mean, I think they did it, the situation, but obviously there's something that's been there. We discussed it on the show back in the day, with Perk saying some things that he thought he should have went directly to Kevin Durant for. And obviously, I think this is going to continue to implode, and we have to watch it.
Well, there's no question about it. And I think that we got to stay on point here because certainly there's a lot of things that we can deduce from this conversation. For example, Jay, before we started on the air, you showed me the breaking news that Troy Weaver is going to be the new general manager for the Detroit Pistons. That's a black GM. That makes about 9 in the NBA. Yep. But Max and Jay, I'm here to tell you, there's only one black GM with real significant power, and that's Masai Ujiri in Toronto. Right. A legitimate argument could be made that every other African-American GM in the National Basketball Association ain't really making decisions. So guess what? You got the title, but it's kind of bogus. I mean, Elton Brand makes some decisions to some degree, but the bottom line is the only real decision maker that is of African-American descent is Masai Ujiri. So this is an NBA issue, for example. These are one of the kind of things that Avery Bradley and others were alluding to. We applaud that. We understand that. All I'm trying to say is this. Think about who we're talking about here. We're talking about Kevin Durant, one of the most special individuals this game has ever seen. Not just because of his greatness on the basketball court, but if you get to know him as a human being, yeah, he got an attitude and he can get on you sometimes, but he's smart, he makes sense, he's fair-minded, he's a good dude, the whole nine. All I'm trying to say is look at the climate that we're living in. There's nothing wrong with us butting heads in terms of disagreeing about how to get to the same avenue we're aiming towards. There's another thing entirely when you engage in name calling, particularly that specific name calling, because you've got an attitude with this guy. You've got to be wise enough to sense the moment and understand this ain't the time for that. No matter how much you want it to come to the defense of your teammate, it's not bigger than the moment. And you've got to be mindful of that when you say something like that about Kendrick Perkins, who did not deserve that in this particular situation.
All right, we got to wrap it up here. I just want to put the name calling aside for a second. And Jay, if you could just give me a yes or no answer from a player's perspective to provide clarity for myself and the audience at home. What Kyrie and Dwight Howard and this Players Coalition objective is right now is to use their leverage. They're feeling like the ball is for the first time in their court to have some changes and to find out exactly what the NBA will do before they decide to resume. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. All right.